Welcome back to another episode of Local Search Tuesdays. This week I've got another awesome presentation to share with you. A few weeks ago, I was down in Fort Lauderdale at the Modern Retailing Conference, and since it was such a popular presentation, I wanted to share it with you here. It's about half an hour long, so kick back and get comfortable. This is the car dealer's guide to Google Business Profiles, and you've seen me speak before. You know I'm all about the movies, so let's get off the templated slide and get to the real title slide, the car dealer's guide to GBP. You know me, I'm Greg. I am the Vice President of Search at SearchLab Digital, but I've been in automotive for years. I've been speaking at all the automotive conferences for over a decade now. I've got a weekly video series I want to make sure you remember to check out if you haven't seen it before. It's called Local Search Tuesdays. There's the link right there. You can hit it every Tuesday morning and see the new videos. They're short 3 to 5 minute clips about how to be better at digital marketing. Also, throughout the presentation, there will be links in the bottom corner in blue, just like that, if there is a video that digs more in depth into a particular topic that I might be talking about on that slide. So pay attention there as well. And you know that I speak at all the automotive stuff, but a lot of people don't realize I speak outside of automotive as well. In fact, I'm a popular conference speaker all over the world. Now, I'm not saying this to brag, but I do get to go all over the world and speak at conferences. So I'm blessed to be able to do that. But at the same time, you see some not so great presenters. You know those guys, they stand behind the podium on the stage the whole time and they talk in a really bored monotone like this. And the background of their slides is typically white. And they pack all of the slides with tons of bullet points. And they're just reading those black Arial font bullet points for the entire presentation, which is no fun for anybody. And it's a scientifically proven fact that bullet points kill kittens. So today we're going to keep all the kitties safe and not kill any kittens. And you know, I'm a movie nut. I was a film major in college. I've got over 800 movies in my iTunes library. I'm obsessed with movies, so much so I can't talk, obviously. But yeah, I'm obsessed with movies. I've got 2 sleeves of movie portrait tattoos, and my right leg is sleeved up with movie tattoos. And I just love to share my love of movies every time I do a conference presentation. So there's always a theme, and today's theme is car movies. So any movie where cars played a significant role in the plot. Now, typically, I'm going to go back and include one movie for every year in the last 50 years. But today we're going back 60 years because if I'm doing car movies, come on, we got to include all of the James Bond movies as well. So there is attribution to the side, especially for those of you that are younger and you won't know some of the older movies. So not only will you learn some awesome stuff about showing up better in local searches, you'll have a kick-ass list of car movies to watch. So let's kick this thing off. Why the long face? Are you spending too much time looking up at other dealerships that rank higher in local searches? Are you wondering, dude, where's my dealership? You might even be hanging on to the visibility that you have for dear life, or you could even feel like you're being murdered by other competitors. Today, I'm going to give you a peek underneath Google's hood and give you some insight into how influential your Google business profile is to your success in search results. In fact, I've got a lot of things to share with you that are for your eyes only. I'm giving you a pause there because I know you guys are laughing so hard at my James Bond joke. I'm going to show you how to make your profile stand out and grab attention so that you'll get more conversions and more customers. And just like a fat guy in a little coat, I'm going to squeeze in a ton of info because I got to go through 144 slides during this presentation and try to finish on time. So I've been talking about local SEO at Digital Dealer for every year for over a decade and all of the other conferences as well. And Google releases over 3,000 updates a year, but throughout that entire time, most of the basics have stayed the same. If you go back and look at the presentations I was doing 10, 11, 12 years ago in automotive, most of the stuff that I'm telling you then is still the stuff that I'd be telling you now. But even so, most dealers and honestly, most of the automotive SEO vendors still suck at SEO. So this time I'm going to try something a little bit different. Instead of just sharing best practices, I'm going to share some hard data. So instead of focusing on here's what you should do for SEO, trust me, I'm going to say here's what you should do, but also here's the data that backs it up and shows you how important this is in the real world. Because if you know what other dealers are doing in your area or not doing, that helps you outpace them and do a better job at SEO. Now, we're in the final stages of this massive research project that we've been working on for a few months on Google business profiles specifically. We pulled over 1.6 million data points on over 8,500 Google business profiles across 3 different verticals. Now, if we're looking just at the automotive side of things, there were a little over 5,000 Google business profiles, but we removed all of the service and parts profiles. So we were only looking at the primary sales Google business profile. So with that, we pulled 2,732 GBPs for car dealers. And here's how we found them. We ran the keywords Ford dealer, Chevrolet dealer, Toyota dealer, Jeep dealer, Kia dealer, and used car dealer in those 14 cities. And then looked at the local finder page, which is where you get after you click more places underneath the map pack. So we're looking at map pack rankings positions 1 through 20 for those keyword phrases in those cities. Now, the full results of this study will be released on our site close to the end of the year, maybe at the beginning of January, but we want to get that out before NADA. I wanted to share some of the aha moments that we found so far as we've started working through the massive amounts of data. Looking at the primary categories, if we come back to this, we're looking at Ford, Chevy, Toyota, Jeep, Kia, and used car dealer. That means that's really locked down. It should be one of those 6 primary categories displayed in the Google business profiles of any dealers that showed up. But we saw 29 different primary categories. So dealers are all over the board with what they're choosing. And here's the really weird thing. Look at that. Almost 20%, almost 1 out of 5 had car dealer as their primary category. That's the most generic thing you can choose, and no one should ever choose that. Yet that's what we're seeing. And then 27.4% of the dealerships only had a single category selected. Now there's 10 slots to select categories in your Google business profiles. There's more than 10 that apply to sales, more than 10 for parts, more than 10 for service. So there is never an excuse to only choose a single category. Looking at the review counts across all of these profiles, there were 2.7 million reviews on the 2,700 Google business profiles. And you're probably doing some quick math in your head, and you're right. That's almost 1,000 reviews on average for Google business profiles for car dealers. And you've heard me talk before, and you've heard George Nenny and a lot of other people talk before about the importance of adding UTM tracking to your website link so that things are correctly attributed in Google Analytics. But only a little over half of the dealerships out there have UTM tracking included on their website link. So that's a bit troubling, right? And then there's the Q&A section that's hugely influential in getting you more conversions. And it's a really great element to utilize to stand out from your competitors. Looking across all of the dealerships, we saw an average of 6 questions asked in the questions and answers section, but hardly any of those had primary answers from the dealership. And then looking at Google Posts, which are hugely influential and basically free ads that show in your Google business profile, looking across the last 12 months, more than half of the dealerships didn't publish a single Google post. Kind of crazy, right? And we all know that it's important to set up a separate parts department and service department profile. Google actually changed the rules specifically for car dealers. Most businesses wouldn't be allowed to do that, but Google lets car dealers do it. And every dealer should have that done. But only about half of the dealers had separate department profiles set up. That's pretty shocking. And then we all know that you can display your inventory on your Google business profile now. It's called Cars for Sale. Although I heard Google's going to be changing that name, which is, I guess, not surprising since Google likes to rebrand things that don't need to be rebranded. Cough, cough, Google business profiles. But almost 30% of the dealerships didn't have Cars for Sale displayed, which there's just no excuse in today's world. Then we started pulling out individual profiles and not necessarily looking for trends of things that would influence search visibility or ranking, but just some interesting stories and some numbers that may have just really jumped out at us. So we started looking at photo counts, and we found a used car dealership that had almost 16,000 photos uploaded to their Google business profile, which is nuts. And then looking at the Q&A section, we found a Ford dealer that had 108 questions in their Q&A on their business profile. Remember, the average is 6, so that's a whole lot. And looking at reviews, 979.5, I think, is the number of the average that we see. We found a Toyota dealership that had almost 21,000 reviews on Google. Crazy, crazy stuff. And as we start to dig through these numbers, and you'll start to see some blog posts and videos from us as we're getting closer to releasing this information, it's been really interesting for us to compare the dealership that ranks number 1 in the map pack to the dealership that ranks number 10 in the map pack to the dealership that ranks number 20 in the map pack. And we can start to get some insight into which things are more influential in the business profile to hopefully affect visibility and get you some help so that you know what you need to do. I've also got an SEO scoring matrix that I use at 20 groups, and I've been using it for years, but I've also adjusted it lately because I've been speaking at more 20 groups. So it's a little bit more intuitive, updated the weights, and it's a pretty good little down and dirty SEO audit. Now, I've also scored hand raisers from conferences and potential partners that we might end up working with. So I thought it would be interesting to go back and look at all of the scoring matrices that I have run personally in the last year. So we've done a lot more than 512, but I personally have done 512 dealers in the last year. And like I said, it's basically a down and dirty mini SEO audit, and it's going to score the 4 major areas that affect your visibility in searches: the content on your site and how that content's optimized, the links pointed to your site, your Google business profile, and your reviews and how you respond to those reviews. The scores of those 4 areas are weighted to approximate the importance of each of the areas to Google's local algorithm. So the on-site score, that's the content on your site, how you optimize it, and then also the technology of your website, has a maximum score of 44 points. And then inbound links, this is other websites linking to your dealership site, that has a maximum possible score of 10 points. And then your Google business profile, maximum possible score of 32 points. That's looking at your business profile, how it's optimized. Do you have separate departments set up? Do you have cars for sale? Do you have questions, et cetera, et cetera? And then the reputation management score with a maximum of 14 points is your reviews on Google and Yelp and how you respond to those reviews. An important note about the matrix here: it scores on tactics, not on strategy. So the way to differentiate those two is strategy is where you're going and tactics are how you get there. If we looked at strategy, that could be something that you could take those scores and take it to your current marketing partner, and they could say, well, that's SearchLab's way of doing SEO. We have a different opinion. We think our way is better and we're getting you good results. So let's just keep on trucking with what we're doing. But when we look at the basic tactics, the SEO 101 stuff that has nothing to do with strategy, and it's all about just everyone knows these are the things that Google's algorithm is looking at, you can't really argue that these scores aren't correct or that these suggestions are not the best way to go about doing SEO. So that's why we look at the tactical level. So one example is you should have the city that you're in mentioned in the title tag on your homepage. The audit will look at that and say, is there a city mentioned in the title tag on the homepage? You could put Honolulu, Hawaii, even though you're located in Miami, Florida, and you'd still get full credit because it's not asking, is the correct city mentioned? It's just asking, is a city mentioned? So that's kind of how the whole thing works. Looking at the average scores across all of these 512 dealerships that we audited, it looks like this. Out of a maximum possible score of 100 points, the average score is a 22.5. And we're going to talk more about the individual areas, but you can see on all of those, they did not score very highly. The highest score overall out of the 512 that we saw was a Volkswagen dealer that scored an 83.6. Now, obviously, the score goes up to 100 points, but a whole lot of things have to fall perfectly to score 100 points. So in reality, it's probably not likely that any dealership would score 100 points, but you really want to shoot for the 80 to 90 range if you're doing good SEO. On the other end of the scale, we found a Stellantis dealer with honestly just an abysmal score. They actually scored a negative 42.5 because things were really, 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 really bad across the board in each of the 4 areas. But one of the things that we look at is the technology of your website. And we can then go through those numbers, parse them out, and figure out how the website providers performed across the board. So looking just at distribution across the 512 dealers that we looked at, here's how the website providers distributed out. 34% dealer.com, 28% Dealer Inspire, 20% Dealer On. Aggregate everything else together, and that's 13%, and then you've got Synchro. So obviously not surprising that Dealer.com is at the top of the list. They're the elephant in the room. They've been around for years. They're in all the OEM programs. Lots of dealers are on them because of the Cox machine. Then we see Dealer Inspire and Dealer On. They've been the top three for years. Not surprising. Probably nobody's surprised that Synchro is way down at the bottom of the list. But if we break the scores down per provider and not look at, now keep in mind, we don't know if people are doing SEO or not here, but we're not looking at anything about brand or location or anything. We're just breaking down what's the average score per website provider. Things flip up quite a bit. Dealer Inspire jumps to the top with almost 25. Dealer On scores right after Dealer Inspire again. Dealer.com drops down to number 3 with a 17.7. Synchro at a 15.3, and then other platforms fall all the way down to a 2.9 average. But let's ignore the 3 areas that aren't really related to the website. If we're not talking about links, and we're not talking about your Google business profile, and we're not talking about your reviews and how you respond to those reviews, we can see more accurately which websites perform better on the SEO side of things, because we don't know whether people are paying for SEO or not. So it gives us a pretty good blind view of each website platform and its performance. Out of a possible 44 points, the best score we saw was a 7.3 on average, and that's across everyone that was on Dealer Inspire. And then Dealer On, about half of that. Dealer.com barely scored positive, Synchro -1, and then all the other platforms averaged a -3. The overall average score, not looking at provider or brand, the overall average was just a 3.4 out of 44 on site. That's 7.7% of the possible score. Looking at the link score, we saw an average of 1.9 out of 10. That's 19%. Easy math there. Then if we look at your Google business profile, average score was 10.5 out of 32. That's a 32.8, much higher percentage. And then looking at reviews, we saw an average of 4.1 out of 14, which is 29.3%. Those percentages show where most of the dealers are really missing out on SEO. So if we're looking at the most influential bit, that's your on-site. The content on your site, how it's optimized, and your website technology. It's the most important for SEO, but it's the lowest average score. We're seeing almost a 33% average score on Google business profiles, almost a 30% on reviews, 19% on links, and only 7% for on-site. Yet that's what most dealers should be paying the most attention to. The most common problems we've seen when we score these dealers: we see multiple cities listed in the title tag of a page and multiple cities listed in the H1 heading of a page. You should always optimize for a single city on each individual page of your site. Optimizing for multiple cities doesn't work. Mismatched keywords or mismatched cities between the title tag and the H1 and other elements on the page. You've got to optimize for the same keyword phrase for each page of your site. You can't mix it up from one area to another, and you can't switch cities out either. And useless pages optimize around near me. You're not going to show up in a search because you have a Ford dealer near me page on your site. As soon as someone searches Ford dealer near me, they're explicitly telling Google they want the Ford dealerships that are closest to their physical location in the real world when they do the search. So those pages are useless. You don't need those pages. And city pages, don't churn out 20 or 30 or 40 city pages to try to show up in cities nearby just because you want to try to conquest those people. You don't have a Google business profile in those cities, so you're very unlikely to show up in those cities. We also see lots of pages on the website that don't have photos on them, which is problematic because you should have a photo on at least every single page of your site. And you're all sitting there probably going, okay, Greg, so what does all that really mean? You're throwing a bunch of data at us, but I mean, who really cares? So the data shows you need to be on Dealer Inspire, and you need to be aggressive with the content on your site and how you optimize that content. And you need to be aggressive with your Google business profiles, and you need to be aggressive with customer reviews. So if you'd like to get your site scored with this matrix, you can scan that QR code right there, or you can email me. Maybe you're watching this on your phone and you can't really scan a QR code if you're watching it on your phone. So that's why I'm throwing the email address there as well. But hey, if you're watching this on desktop, scan that QR code and that will take you to a form that you can fill out. We're not going to send you sales information. I really don't do this to try to sell you stuff. I want to get as many sites audited as possible so that we have better data to share with you next year when we come back. So before we talk about what to actually do to show up better in those searches, we need to talk about the broken system. That OEM approved vendor program is not in your dealership's best interest because any of the vendors in that program are forced to work with any dealer that wants to show up. So you'll end up in a situation in larger metros where 4 or 5 competitors are all using the same vendor for SEO, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And because that middleman of Shift Digital or Ford Direct or whoever gets a cut off of that, monthly billable, the only way those vendors can make up the loss in profit is to squeeze more dealers onto the available team members. And it is very common for pretty much every case that anyone in those OEM programs has anywhere from 50 to 100 dealers per person that they're responsible for. So if you do the math on that, you're not really getting very much time spent for the money that you're investing in SEO. They're also locked into specific packages. Once you get into the program, it is exceedingly difficult to change your offering. But like I mentioned earlier, Google released over 3,000 updates last year alone. So they should be updating and adjusting to the changing times with Google. They also have to provide the exact same service to every dealership. They can't customize per dealership. So that means that same cookie cutter stuff gets used for everybody. So a Ford dealer in Dallas, where there's 20 Ford stores in one market, gets the same SEO strategy and tactics as a Ford dealer in Wyoming who doesn't have a competing Ford dealer for 100 miles in any direction. Those are two vastly different situations and they need vastly different strategies and tactics, but that's not going to happen. How is any of that good for your dealership? In today's post-COVID world, if you want to win with SEO, you need a customized strategy for your dealership. Those OEM vendors have been using the same strategies and tactics they've been using for years, so it's not going to be a customized strategy for you. And most of the time, those vendors are doing traditional SEO, not local SEO. And local SEO is what you actually need. Car dealers need local SEO because Google uses its local algorithm to return search results related to car dealers. So Google has multiple algorithms at play, and it's going to choose which algorithm to use based on the intent of the search query that was entered by the person doing the search. The reason we know that you need local SEO is because all searches related to auto dealers are automatically localized. Check this out right here. I just did a search for Ford dealer, and it's showing me Ford dealers in my immediate area there in Plano, Texas, where my office is, even though I didn't specify that. And remember that local SEO isn't just your Google business profile. A lot of people kind of have that association that they think local means just your Google business profile, but it's your website content and how you optimize it. And it's link building and it's reviews as well. So you need to be paying attention to all of those. Now, if we look back at those percentages from the matrix, the best percentage was Google business profile. And that's because dealers know it's important and they put a lot of effort into it, but it's not going to matter as much if you're ignoring the other 3 areas. But today we're going to concentrate for the rest of the presentation on your Google business profiles. It's basically your new home page. People don't have to go to your website to get your phone number or your address or to see pictures of the dealership or to read questions or read reviews. They can do all of that in the search experience on your Google business profile. It's your first impression with any potential customer. And your Google business profile is also what allows you to show in map pack results and Google Maps searches. So you need a properly set up profile if you want to run VLAs. Now, should you be running VLAs? That's a whole nother question. Sure, it's the hot, shiny new object and all the dealers are going squirrel and they want to go run and do it, or they see their competitors doing it and they want to go and do it. Keep in mind, you shouldn't spend a whole lot of money here because you're not going to get conversions. It's a lot of window shoppers. It's a lot of early funnel traffic. But if you want to run VLAs, you have to have a properly set up Google business profile or Google's not going to allow you to do it. Now, I've got to point out the fact that support really sucks at Google. The support team rotates out pretty often. They're not familiar with all of the intricate rules. They're going to follow a specific script. So even if you call and say, hey, I've got a problem, I've tried A, B, and C already and they don't work, that person at support is going to say, well, have you tried A? And you'll come back and say, yes, I already told you I tried A. You're also going to tell me next, I need to try B. I've already done that. It just doesn't work. And they'll come back and say, well, have you tried B? So it just doesn't make sense. So support is horrible and especially bad because they don't realize that dealers are allowed to have separate parts and service departments set up. And a lot of times if you call into support or contact support, they'll shut those down because they think you're not allowed to have them. So instead of going to support, you should go to the Google Business Profile Community Forum. So Google has a community forum for all of its products. Now, the forum is not staffed by Google employees. It's staffed by volunteers. So volunteers come share their expertise there. Now, once someone has answered enough questions consistently well, they get invited to be in the product expert program. And that just basically gives them a little badge. So you see if you get a response from someone that's a product expert, you know they've been endorsed by Google to know what they're talking about. And then once you're in the program and you continue to answer stuff well and consistently, you get escalated in levels. And the really cool thing about the forum is that anyone at gold or platinum level has the ability to escalate your forum thread issue directly to the Google Business Profile team and completely skip support and get you fixed. So this is a really great way to go. And I'm going to tell you a secret. Before you post, make sure you don't share this in your post. But if you have an issue, once you've created the post, you can click the 3 dots to the top right corner and get a link to that post. If you pop me an email, I am a gold level product expert. I'm about to be a platinum level by the end of the year, and I will help you. So all you need to do, because you saw me present today, is create that post, get the link, email me the link and say, hey, can you escalate this post for me? I'll go escalate it for you, and then you'll have your problem fixed. So it'll be awesome. And remember, when we're talking about your dealership and search results, that customers are going to shop around. People don't decide to buy a car and sit down and do one Google search and go to the first dealership that they find and buy a car from that dealership. They're going to go through the entire buying funnel. They're going to do research. They're going to shop around. So you've got to optimize the heck out of your business profile so that you will stand out from all of the noise of the other dealerships in town. Make sure you use your actual business name. Now, if you are Greg Gifford Ford Inc., that doesn't mean you need to have the comma INC period on your Google Business Profile. It just means you don't want to say Greg Gifford Ford dash used cars and new Fords in Dallas. Like adding extra keywords like that, it's actually really powerful and it does really work well, but it's very against the rules and it will cause a suspension, and you definitely do not want to get suspended, because at best you get a soft suspension, which means you still show in search results. You just don't have access to your profile and you can't do anything to edit information or reply to reviews. But at worst, a hard suspension means your Google Business Profile just will not show up in search results until you get it fixed. So make sure you use your actual dealership name. Don't add anything in, even the city name, unless the city is part of your actual dealership name. Make sure you're selecting the correct categories. There are 10 slots to enter categories. There are more than 10 categories that apply to sales, more than 10 for parts, more than 10 for service. So choose the right categories. I like this interactive list from Plepper Tools because you can enter a single category and then it will spit out a list of all of the other categories that are most often selected along with that category that you chose. Since Google doesn't really have any sort of autocomplete or dropdown, it's really hard to know what all the various categories are. So this tool is extremely helpful. You should make sure that you set up those separate department Google Business Profiles that I've mentioned several times already. And you might say, well, hey, why would I want to do that? Well, the categories that you choose have a massive influence on which searches you could potentially show up for. And if there's more than 10 for parts, more than 10 for service, and more than 10 for sales, there's no way you could have a single profile and have all of those together. Plus, if someone is looking specifically for Ford service in Dallas and you have a profile that is only about that, you're much more likely to show up in search results than if you just had a single profile for sales, parts, and services. So if you watch this video here, it will explain how to set those up if you're one of the few dealers out there that still hasn't done this. As you set those up, or looking at the ones that you already do have set up, make sure that you do not mix categories between departments. That just means sales categories go on sales, parts categories go on parts, and service categories go on service. You can't mix them between the three, or it's going to hurt your potential visibility in searches. It's also helpful to use George Nenny's GMB Spy plugin for Chrome so that you can see what your competitors have chosen, and that might help you uncover some deficits in your own strategy or in your Google business profile. Be strategic with the first category that you choose. Your primary category, the top one on the list, has a little bit more weight in Google's algorithm, so it's more influential for showing up in searches related to that phrase. So watch this video, it walks you through it. But if you're a Ford dealer and you're in Wyoming and there's not another Ford dealer for 500 miles in any direction, then you probably shouldn't have Ford dealer as your primary category, because you're automatically going to show up for Ford dealer because you're the only option. So you should probably have used car dealer, because that's where you're going to be fighting for the most business. But if you're a Ford store in Dallas, you 100% should have Ford as your primary category. So watch this video, it goes a lot more in depth there. You want to make sure you're uploading a lot of high quality, professionally shot photos. Customers can upload photos as part of their review, or they can just be at the dealership or near the dealership and tag the dealership when they upload the photos to Google, and they will show up in your Google business profile. And because you can't select what Google displays, those will be mixed in with all of your photos. Google tends to prefer the high quality, high resolution, professionally shot photos. That's why you want to make sure you're uploading a lot of those. You want to make sure that the phone number you list has a local area code on it. This is a big signal to Google, and there's honestly no reason to have an 800 number anymore. Everyone can call for free. The only reason you might have an 800 number is because you're doing call tracking. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do call tracking. In fact, you should do call tracking on your Google business profile, but make sure it's a local area code tracking number, and put that tracking number as the primary number, so that's what shows up to the public. But then you've got 2 alternate phone number slots. You want to put your actual local number in one of those alternate slots so that the algorithm sees consistency with all of the other directory sites that list that local number. Like I mentioned earlier, UTM tracking is hugely important. Attribution is broken. You've probably been taught that direct means someone typed in a URL or used a bookmark. That's not really the case. What it means is there is no referral information passed to Google Analytics. So for instance, when someone's on an iPhone and they do a search and they click on your Google business profile, that would be classified as direct in Google Analytics, because iPhones do not pass referral information into analytics. So when you add the UTM tracking that looks something like this, that forces it to be attributed correctly. Now, I have GMB listing as the source. You could put GBP or Google Business Profile or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter. It's hugely important that the medium is organic with a lowercase o. Don't put social. There's some vendor that works with Ford, and a lot of the Ford dealers have the medium set to social. That is very, very incorrect and bad for your data. But if you currently have it set to be GMB, you don't have to go change it to GBP or whatever. You just need to have something different there. Now, a lot of people will tell you should put Google there, and then you should put a campaign variable in to say GMB, but it's much better to not put Google there and have something different, so that at the immediate first level of going into the source medium report in Google Analytics, you can see the difference between clicks that happen in regular Google organic search results and clicks that happen in Google Maps or in the map pack or on your Google business profile. You want to make sure that you're using Google Posts as well. I mentioned them briefly earlier. They're basically free ads that appear in search results in your business profile. Now, a lot of dealers quit using them years ago when they moved from the top of the profile to the bottom, but they still help you stand out from competitors. They still help you attract click-throughs and more customers. So why would you not do them? Moz is a very popular SEO tool set, and they have a very famous long-running SEO video series called Whiteboard Fridays. I did a Whiteboard Friday episode last year all about Google Posts. So there's the link to it right there. It's 15 minutes of densely packed information about how to be awesome on Google Posts. So go watch that for sure. I'm going to pull a couple of things out that are really important to share with you today. But, hey, I'm kind of running out of time. I didn't want to sit here for 3 hours when I'm only supposed to talk for 40 minutes. Most importantly, don't treat Google Posts like social media. And that's the biggest mistake that most dealers make. You have to treat them like an ad. The kind of stuff that you would share on Facebook and Twitter doesn't work as a Google post because it's not social media. It's an ad. It's a call out on your profile. Don't share the social fluff that you would share on Facebook, because people seeing this haven't chosen to follow you and they don't care enough about you yet to click there unless it's a compelling offer. And part of the don't treat it like social media bit is also don't use hashtags. Hashtags are really only for Instagram and Twitter, maybe a little bit for LinkedIn, but You shouldn't be using them on Facebook either, but for sure you shouldn't be using them on your Google posts. And never, ever, ever share delivery photos as posts. Lots of dealers do that. But again, this person hasn't been to your website yet. And even if they have been to your website, they don't care that you sold a car to Jimmy or Susan or Karen or whoever. That's not an effective Google post, so don't do it. You shouldn't be creating Google posts for specific vehicles, one single item of inventory. That's not the right way to use Google posts, especially because up above where your posts are displayed in your profile, you've already got cars for sale, or you should already have cars for sale displayed that lets people look at specific vehicles. That's not compelling enough and it doesn't work. But the overall key to success is optimizing what's displayed in the post thumbnail. Most people only pay attention to the full post, but Google's going to crop in on the image and it's only going to display a few lines of text in the thumbnail. And if that thumbnail image and couple of lines of text are not compelling enough, no one's going to click on the post to see the full post, so it won't be successful. The problem, though, is that image cropping is really inconsistent. You could take the same image and load it in, and it's going to crop slightly differently every time you do it. And that's really frustrating, even more so because it's slightly higher than vertical center. So it just doesn't really make a lot of sense, and you can't choose how that crop works. So for better control over what shows in the image thumbnail, we've created a Photoshop guide, and I'm sharing it with you for free here. So you can go download it at that link. And when you open it up, it's going to look like this. Anything in that white grid is safe, quote unquote. I'm doing air quotes. You just can't see. But anything in the white grid is going to show up in the thumbnail, and then the full image will appear when they click and see the full post. It's also really important to pay attention to the questions and answers section. It's been around since 2017, and a lot of dealers still don't know that it's there. And it allows anybody to ask you a question, and any random a-hole can answer that question for you. And that should terrify you because there's some really scary stuff out there. Customers think that it's some sort of an instant messaging widget or a chat widget, and that somebody is waiting on the other end live to answer the questions that they enter. But what it really is a community discussion widget that comes from Google Maps that's just displayed in your Google business profile. Now, any question that's asked can receive multiple answers, but it's only going to display one primary answer and then a link to read other answers if the user so chooses. So the answer that shows as the primary answer is the one that has the most thumbs up or upvotes. So it's really important that you keep an eye on your questions and answers section and keep all of your dealership answers upvoted to appear as the primary answer to the questions, because that's a much better pre-site FAQ experience. You can even load in your own questions, which a lot of dealers don't realize. And some vendors even say you're not allowed to, but Google actually encourages people to do this. No one's going to go to your website and look at an FAQ page and read through 40 or 50 questions to see if one of the questions listed on the page matches the question that they have to ask. They're either going to call you or they're going to chat or text, or if they're on your Google business profile, they're just going to click ask a question and ask that question. So you want to upload all of the common questions and have them all in your business profile and then answer them and keep your answers upvoted. The reason that that's important is as someone is typing in a question, if a similar question has been asked and answered in the past, Google will auto-complete that question and supply an answer automatically based on the past answer. So now they don't have to read through all of your questions. They can click ask a question and start to type their question. And if they're asking something that's been asked before, it's just going to auto-complete it and give them the answer. That is such a better pre-site experience than not having the answer and having to go dig around on your site. So it makes it more likely that you're going to convert those customers. So you should be doing it. Here at the end, I'm going to show you a couple of fun examples of Q&A in the wild that isn't great or even went horribly wrong. Now, obviously, this is blown up a little bit on the screen, but we see this all the time where the ask a question button is literally like an inch or an inch and a half away on the screen from the darn phone number. But people, again, think it's chat or instant messaging, so they say, hey, what's your phone number? Or they could go to your website. There's a website link, or multiple website links. And clearly, you could go there and get the phone number, but these guys think it's chat. And notice right here, it's an Impala with an overheating engine. That's service work. And the dealership didn't answer. Or we saw this one where it's not even a question. Somebody just said, hey, your website sucks. And their website was so bad, somebody else said, yeah, I'm not a fan of it either. So obviously this person was probably on dealer.com, but this is an example of a question that you could get removed because it's not a question. So if you go over to the right, there'll be 3 vertical dots. You click on those dots and you can select report and get this question removed because it's just a statement. It's not a question. And this was a fun one. I was doing a presentation for Stellantis dealers in Austin at Google headquarters, and I like to pull up local examples, and I'd pulled this one up to illustrate the upvoting system for multiple answers. And so the question is, does this dealership have a body shop? And the answer is, don't go here. Look at their reviews. I had a horrible experience with them. They lie to you and everybody else. But there's 6 more answers. And when the dealership answers, it shows the dealership name and then it says owner in parentheses. And obviously, this is a much better answer. Now, when I finished talking, somebody came walking up to me and said, hey, man, I actually work at that dealership. And I was like, oh, my gosh, man, I'm not trying to embarrass you. And he said, no, I'm not embarrassed. How do we fix this? And I said, oh, it's easy. Because if you notice, there's no thumbs up on this answer, but there's 1 thumb up there. So we just grabbed 3 people in the front row, had them get on their phones, go look up South Point, go to the questions and answer section and do a thumbs up on the dealership answer. And boom, immediately that dealership answer became the primary answer to the question. And this was for a conference that I did in Boston a little bit before COVID. And it's an old New England building, so the hallways were very twisty and the numbers weren't consistent. It was very confusing. Obviously, other people had the same experience because somebody asked, how are the room numbers ordered? And this smug SOB comes in and says alphabetically. Clearly, we all laugh at that and it's funny, but that's not a great pre-site experience for someone thinking about maybe staying at that hotel, and the hotel should pay attention and answer that better. And this last one is my favorite example of all time. Thank God I got a screen capture because the guy that answered it has now changed his answer. I guess he thinks he's a comedian, but this is for the London Eye, the big Ferris wheel on the Thames River in downtown London. And the question is, do you have to wear a helmet? And the original answer was, you don't have to, but you can if you wish. I believe Viking helmets are a popular choice. Now, the guy's changed it now to say, yeah, I almost fell out 3 times, which is still kind of funny, but it's an enclosed bubble. Like, you're locked in. You can't physically fall out. So I don't think it's as funny. But what you want to do is upload all of your own questions and answer all of your questions and keep those answers upvoted to be displayed as primary. So you have an awesome pre-site FAQ experience just like this. Thank you so much for taking that crazy ride with me today. Hopefully now you've got the key to success with your Google business profile and you know some of the better things to do to help stand out from competitors. So now when you're looking at search results, you're not going to want to jump off of a cliff because your dealership is going to win the race to the top of search results. Thanks so much for watching the Car Dealer's Guide to Google Business Profiles. There's my Twitter account if you'd like to follow me. I do speak at lots of conferences, so it would be an opportunity to learn more about SEO. And there's my email address. If you have any questions, I have an open email policy. I'm happy to answer any questions you might ever have about SEO. I won't try to sell you stuff. I'm just here to help. And I'm sure they're going to give you a copy of the slides here from the conference, but if you don't want to wait, you can also email me and get a copy of the slides because, as always, at the end, there is a list of all the movies by order of release date. Thanks so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed.
Thanks for sticking around to watch the whole thing. That's definitely all the time we've got left for this week's video, so you know what that means. Put your hand on the screen right here. We totally just high-fived because you learned something awesome. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week for another episode of Local Search Tuesdays.